of merges, but that's just because the Git stuff hasn't truly finalized. And he was just working off an old version.
Actually, his code that he added for the ticket.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. Did you have a question first, though?
Yes, sorry. Why is the author here always given as someone else than him if it was him who merged the stuff?
So it wasn't him who merged the stuff.
No?
But no. He based it off of something that had a lot of merges in it. So
So when the author is not Nathan Cohen, can I just ignore these things on review?
not necessarily, because maybe multiple authors worked on that ticket.
Well, okay, but if I know it's definitely not one of the authors of the ticket, can I just ignore all the tornado merges?
Maybe it. I mean, it's really context sensitive.
I think here what should happen here, there was some of the Git stuff you haven't put into the master yet, but that he was doing that. So there's still stuff in there that will be eventually mastered, but doesn't belong to the ticket. So once the other Git stuff will be merged, it won't appear in this list anymore. This list is all the stuff that's not mastered yet. And just as dependency is unfortunately some of the stuff that we want to put into the Git release. So once the Git release is done, the secret stuff will be removed and only maintenance will be there here in this view.
Is there a way of thinking from which point you start to, because there is a master branch, but I guess there are also all the release version branch, and how do we know as a developer where to put our stuff, like when to start or
So
there's a kind of official branch?
So the master branch will have the most up-to-date development code that's been merged. But if you need some feature that hasn't been merged yet, because of review or whatnot, you should base it off of that. But if you don't,
The master branch has everything that is being merged, so it would be like you guys have actually.
right, and there'll be a different branch, probably release, that has the stable versions in.
Okay, the master branch.
Oh, sorry, so what happens if one of these merges will be considered harmful and, so to say, unmerged, or actually not merged?
There'll be a revert instead of a non-merge. So that merge will still be in history, but then you'll also have another merge, or another commit that undoes that.
I see.
Which is actually what your own does now. He changed his development scripts a few months back to make it easier for us. So he also does not unmerge things ever. He only ever reverts something in a later beta if something's problematic. So basically a commit to just undo another commit. So you asked about seeing the difference. So if this works, this will show us the difference. Ken's track is not the greatest at this sort of stuff. By not the greatest, I mean pretty bad. But this change looks like it's very small, so we can see here's the changes he made.
If the fact has been made on top of some other branches, will it show also the changes that were related to another ticket?
Yes.
Okay. And
So it's always going to be against the master branch.
Okay. And is there a way to see, because if you, like somebody is making some change, and so you put it on track, and it's like a ticket that you have everything there, and you making some new changes, and the other one has not been merged yet. Is there a way when some people look at your ticket to see that the difference between what you made and what comes from this first ticket?
So, I mean, through track there is no way.
Okay.
However,
I thought there was with the commits.
I guess
you
there.
can do the
I
diff
guess
and
you
you
could do
select.
some diff select through the commits.
I'm also considering that there is one way to do it on track, namely you review the dependency gets merged, and then it's not there anymore. This is, I mean, the way to do it. Because if everything that's not just there because we want it to be there, we want all this code to be shown that equals to dependency. It is there because if the release manager merges that from that branch, then all this code will be in the release version too.
So something potentially may be removed from the dependency, but not removed from this thing. And if you merge this thing prematurely, you get some problems because you didn't want to actually merge some potentially harmful code. Yeah.
So, okay, let me see. It diffs it against the master which is current, or the master which was current at the time the patch was started?
So it should be against the current master. There is some problems with it misdetecting. So if I go back, it's green because it should merge without any issues. Should be no conflicts.
That's what I was about to ask.
However, it'll be red and it'll have a what's the word? No, it'll little pop-up. Tooltip. That's the word I'm looking for. A tooltip describing what the issue was. However, one of those issues, which is does it merge correctly or not, doesn't seem to be quite working flawlessly right now. So, but
For a long time in the future, if you look at that, you will see the code differences being undoing everything to the new stage since that ticket was merged, and then.
so what the diff that I just showed was basically kind of doing a merge without doing a merge, and then the difference that you get with the merged content against what's currently in master.
I was saying in the future, if this ticket gets merged, and then stage development continues, and later in the future I go to this page, what do I see?
Let's go look at, say, another ticket that has that exact case because its attached branch is just master. Some point. Here we go. So this branch is just master because this is the one, this whole big Git changeover is right here, 13.015. And what you see is you get this tooltip that says no commits on branch yet. That's just because there's nothing in your branch that is new. It's already there.
And in the future, this will say
Same
negative
thing.
number of commits, or what?
There's no commits in your branch that are new to master.
But then you can never see again what was done in that ticket.
So, however,
I mean, and
that's why I'm saying that this thing right here needs to be frozen. Because that'll tell you, that SHA-1 will tell you where in history that ticket, or what the last commit was for that ticket. And also, there'll be nice merge commits done by the release manager that has all the metadata that is associated to the ticket. So all this description and the reviewers, the authors will all be in the history, which I don't think we don't currently actually have.
Now, why have the branch difference be off the master instead of some merging of the dependencies?
So the reason for that is, again, if you positive review, say, this ticket, and it gets merged, then all the code that you see against master is going to be the code that gets merged into master.
But when the dependencies have to be merged anyways?
So
Why not the difference in dependencies? Because you're going to be constantly merging any changes to the dependency into the ticket that you're working on.
probably not constantly merge the changes to the dependencies into the ticket that you're working on. For the same reason that you don't want all that garbage merge stuff in there.
Well, then
But
how,
then you
then
could
how would we
merge-
work around,
You could
like,
merge something, and then the one that is based on is not yet merged, but it's already merged with the latest ticket.
And
You know
there's
that-
nothing wrong with that. If your ticket includes some other code, but that other code is not, well, still needs some small documentation fixed state, then why shouldn't your ticket, since it works and it's documented, be pulled into Sage directly and usable, and then the rest, the small documentation for the dependency can be fixed later on.
I think the problem
that
things
exists-
come- if,
But
of
then
course,
it's
your
gonna
code
depend
just doc testing your ticket and includes testing all the other code. So if used based on something that hardly works at all, then your code can't be merged because it's dependency bound already.
well,
But if-
you could depend upon some small feature that does work very well,
Yeah.
but the rest of it just is more or less in a sad state.
And that's a good reason to kind of break up your tickets more, not have these massive monolithic things, so that you can use a small feature because it's in a small ticket.
Yeah.
In particular, the commits don't you need to belong to one ticket. Commits can be indicated code part of the ticket, and if you want to, you can just decide to take this commit and put it logically into your ticket by reviewing in your ticket, and then that's fine. If that commit is correct and ready to be merged, then you can merge.
So then who's the author?
The author is whoever authored the commit. And the commit includes the author, the person who made the commit. It will be the email address of the person who made the commit.
But if
If
it's
you cannot-
based on Vivian's code, but only part of her, then I would be the author.
Well, then you can.
You
take
will
the
be the
viewer-
author on the track ticket.
Yeah.
But that's just to say logically you start this feature. But the small bit that you use in Compare is always authored by her. Whether or not where it's getting merged doesn't matter. The commit keeps track of who authored what. And if you have a dependency, then part of your code is of course authored by somebody else, not by the person who authored the ticket on the track. The name of the person on the track ticket is only to say who I correspond with if I have an issue with the track ticket. It's not, but the mechanics of keeping track of who wrote which line is done by Git, not by track.
Yeah, okay.
So what about if, let's take tutorial constructions patch, where, alright, the main core layout and functionality has been done for a long time, pretty much. But there's lingering issues, startup time, some overflow, or some documentation doesn't fill. And it's like, this is something that more or less breaks Sage in certain ways, but, you know, this functionality is still there. You don't want to merge your ticket, which depends upon this, because then all the broken stuff would also get merged. But
I mean, you only
Hey,
have
but
a
we're
possible
working on-
review and merge it, then you can't.
but what if this? But
You
isn't
can't
it the
merge a
release?
ticket that is pending on the ticket in the past.
Right, but
So
we're not in charge of merging these tickets, and the release manager is. And this, and if that's true, then why are we not basing the change difference on the dependencies?
it's not the release manager is just doing the mechanics of merging things. That you are in charge of telling the release manager what to merge. You can't say, oh, I'm just writing code. You have to tell the release manager what to merge.
Right, but it still can't get merged until all dependencies are merged. But this seems to be in conflict with what you were saying earlier, where you do some code, it depends upon something that, say, some documentation, something trivial like that, then, well, let's just merge your ticket with all of the previous code that you've merged into it.
That's why you should tell if your code can be merged. If your code cannot be merged, then don't tell the release manager not to merge it.
But isn't the whole point to set it to positive review, saying, look, my portion of this code, you know, once these dependencies are done, you know, this can be positive. you know.
But what the dependencies is, as long as the dependencies are merged, you're not sure what the dependencies are because they can be changed. So you can't say this code is correct because maybe the person who does the dependency will go insane or just stops working on it. But it's not.
Alright, but
You
then,
can-
so,
you can
so then we
update it,
have
but-
to let it sit at needs review then, and have to keep a list of things that have dependencies where we have to go and check every day to see if these dependencies are possibly reviewed and merged.
That's right, and that's a lot better than having the release manager burden with checking through a bunch of tickets that the release manager never worked on and has no idea who is working on those, but having the release manager somehow try to figure out what can be merged.
Or why can't we automate this?
We can automate it, but first we need to have actually some.
Well, like this is
So
the mechanism to do that.
Git is the mechanism to keep track of that kind of thing. You can, and people have automated that kind of thing where you wanna sign off on each individual commit or regular commit, and then notify me if everything is reviewed up to this. Okay. That can be done, but
before,
first
I
we
mean,
need to have a Git to take care of the mechanics of the process.
But the release manager, before basically just plug this into a script.
No,
and get-
not
I
that
mean-
easy. The dependencies will open circular, there's no easy scripting.
Yeah, I mean, with talking with him, it sounds like it's a lot of kind of trying to figure out where to place things. He ends up, from how I understand it, at least writing. He wrote lots of scripts to assist him with this, but like he has these giant files that you can see of him like reordering patch files, because sometimes it'll merge one way but not the other way, and but it's not something that the release manager should have to do. Huge burden on the release manager.
Well,
taking
And right now it's
But I'm still confused about what, I mean, I agree with what Trevor said, like we have this non-symmetric function patch, and it is based on the tutorial construction patch. That one has a positive review, but the other one hasn't been merged yet.
I would say there's lots of ways to deal with the mechanics of how you want to say I'm fine with these commits but haven't looked at these other commits. So I would say the easiest thing is to just write it in a ticket. I looked at the changes, at the commits that exist and I'm fine with those.
Okay.
And then whenever the dependencies are finished, then somebody can come and say, oh, by the way, this is all reviewed now, so you set it to positive review. And then the release manager sees positive review. No.
Can we get maybe another status for this? Because
We could,
what-
Another
there could
field?
be another status.
Yeah,
like
ju-
follow-ups.
up to-
Follow-ups would be a very good thing to have
Yeah,
as a
'cause,
field.
I mean, because a lot of times, like, you go to, tickets you've worked on, and you can break it up into needs info, needs work,
If
positive
anything,
review.
follow-ups might be better than dependencies.
But even if you want to really get serious about bookkeeping automatically, then there are costs to you per commit release and things like that. You just I review this commit, and then you can ask, I want this to be merged, what hasn't been reviewed yet, and then give you a bunch of commits that haven't been reviewed, or you can ask, so people have reviewed various commits, and is ready, what is this particular commit ready to be merged, is everything that depends that is dependent reviewed, and then the system must automatically track it. Maybe one should set up a system like that, but I think it's premature to discuss exactly what kind of system we want to have. But in the beginning we should just try to keep it as simple as possible. The simplest system is least intrusive of what we have now. We have your branches, and every branch you positively commit. From every branch that you review can be committed. And there's not, it's simple, there's a lot more that can be done, but you first tried out to get used to it and see if any perceived disadvantages are actually crossed?
So I think I see two issues with it. One is completely technical. That if we review commit like, then often I would probably often say something like this. I am fine with commit 5 as long as commit 8 is also in there, because commit 8 fixes a bug in commit 5. But this way, so I'm saying I've given my yes to commits 5 and 8, but I have not, or maybe I have not looked at commit 6 and 7. And now so now somebody else has checked commits 1, 2, 3, and 4, and people see, okay, so the first non-positively reviewed is 6, so let's merge 1 till 5. And now the error is there, because my review to commit 5 was dependent on commit 8, which is not yet merged, not yet mergeable. And so the review basically was misunderstood. So it should not be enough to say that I'm fine with this commit, and this commit. It should be more like I'm fine with the following subsets of commits, which is of course a lot of info.
Yeah, but I mean, again, at the same time, we're going to be merging branches and not just individual commits. So if this branch, right, is going to have a bunch of commits that all need review, and so you said 1 through 5 and 8,
Yeah.
but the branch is going to have all of 1 through 8 in there, assuming you didn't do some, like, you're doing some linear thing, which it
So
seemed like.
okay, so basically the whole branch as it exists at the state of merging should be positively reviewed.
Right.
Okay, and the other issue, so there is definitely, I think he mentioned that that people, some patches just play around and never get reviewed. It's not usually because reviewers are slow, but usually because things remain at needs info for eternities. Like, people actually don't know whether the page does, whether the advantages of the page just justify the disadvantages. We have this with factorial constructions. We have this a lot with lazy power series and stuff like this. And if I'm basing my patch off such a slow patch, and at some point I realize this is not going anywhere, this patch will never get reviewed in foreseeable time, then I have to completely rewrite my history in order to get it merged in foreseeable time. Is it right? Or is there an alternative?
Well, it seems like if your patch works, then the reviewer can set the positive review, and it'll get merged with whatever version of the patches you depend upon are at.
No, but that's not what I meant.
For example, we will introduce multiple kinds of view control construction. If the reviewer is fine with that, I mean, then he could he could have also
No.
reviewed the function for all the view
The reviewer
Not
is not fine.
necessarily, because there could be minor, other more
Yeah, I mean,
technical
he
issues
sounded
or
like
parallel
the
issues,
scope.
and this.
He
I
sounded
mean,
like he wanted to actually use the means of the factorial construction. Then
No.
you will introduce a good example of that.
What I mean is, let's say I depend on the factorial construction code because I use a bit of it. Then I decide I will no longer want to depend on it because it will never get merged. So I rewrite the parts that depend on it to not depend on it. And so technically I should be able to work directly from master. So I rewrite my history to work from master. Because as far as I understand, this is the only way to get merged.
I would say if you can do your stuff without the factorial construction, then you should have started with that.
Yeah, but you
Don't-
might only realize that later.
Yeah.
Of
I mean,
course,
that's-
yeah, I realize. I'm
Because
just
there are a lot of
saying,
people who
I'm
have
just
that
saying,
issue.
don't
I mean, I think it's
don't
a real
start out
issue.
with the most funky, half-written stuff.
But
Start
But
out with the
people-
master plus the
but this
minimal
happens.
dependencies.
So is that use case actually working right with the current workflow, or like is it taking some from
Well,
piece
at
of
least
work that
in
works?
principle,
It
you
is.
could commute your patch past this other patch and rewrite it so that it works again, and then commit that and upload that patch.
And that's what I will introduce a lot of friction if other people do yours, you rewrite yours, and everybody who uses your stuff, you have to rewrite their stuff.
How
Which is essentially the problem with rebasing. Yeah. Okay, if you started with the wrong dependencies for whatever reasons, then maybe you will have to rebase your patch. But then you better, you can write a say eval, say, okay, I realize that dependency is here and I have to rebase it. So everybody who based the stuff off this is true, meaning you have to rebase your code as well on my new run. And okay, that sucks. Sometimes it's necessary, but it shouldn't be the default. This should be the exception, not the rule.
But it's still possible.
It's possible, yeah. But I mean, it's not just you who have to rebase it, but everybody who uses that law has to do it.
Well, this mercurial, it was easier for the others.
Maybe not. Depends on how much they use from your patch. Probably they would have to rebase theirs, and they weren't notified what changed. So then somebody had to write onto the same command, meaning, oh look, with this new patch I'm getting some conflict, and somebody figure out. Then somebody else will have to figure out why this patch probably doesn't apply anymore. And okay, the only thing is that you could have been lucky that you wouldn't have, somebody might not have had to rebase their stuff before you change your patch, because patches don't know about the history.
Yeah.
But that's also the problem, patches don't know about the history, so you lose them, you get the wrong version. It's true that using Git or any source control mechanism makes it imposes more discipline. But that's the whole point of it. It imposes as much discipline on you as necessary that nothing can be lost.
But this seems like this will have major, I guess, difficulties, for lack of a better word, for getting major sweeping changes into the structural framework of Sage, where it doesn't just touch these certain areas that you can actually know about and go through, but like for me, if it goes and touches a lot of the algebraic geometry stuff, indirectly, I wouldn't know how to review that, and I'd have to get someone else who knows that and who would know about the random graphs and this and that, and this seems like you'd have a much larger project than what might be
I would say
necessary.
it makes it easier because all the mechanics of the source handling are done for you. You can make a large sweeping change, meaning a huge branch that rearranges things, and you can work on that for a long time. Occasionally you could merge in changes on master, but you can work in parallel to master for a long time, and there's no problem with having to actually take care of the code. The code is managed for you. You can't lose anything. It's easy to pull down your big changes, compile them, and make a small change, put it back on track. So in the end, the bigger your changes, the more you will depend on automatic management of the source code for you. I guess that's the reason why this whole thing has implemented.
I think the issue is not big changes, but changes which take long to review and changes which are controversial, in the sense that they might get reversed and so on.
But then I would say try to not make a linear chain of things where the end hash depends on the first n minus 1, but try to make everything as independent as possible, which is difficult if you have just patches to main around, because then you have to do all the work yourself by hand, and you'll just be tempted to put everything in one line. But instead, everything that's independent you should develop independently. If you don't absolutely need the factorial constructions, but just one live, but it would be nice to have for speed, then don't use it. Once it's finished, you'll merge it into your branch and you'll have the speed. But as long as you don't need it, don't base it as positive. And at the end, if the product that you want, then you can ship out to your Sage customers and the merge of all those independent things. But you don't have to develop those independent things together. That will make everything as independent as possible. The Linux kernel has big exchange of communication with everything. People have to exchange a schedule there in Linux a couple of times, and that's about as sweeping as you can do a Linux kernel. And it works, but I can only say it works for others.
Are you going to try to save some of the mercurial history?
So all the material history has been preserved. You want to move on now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I talked a little bit about track. So another way to view all this code is so this kind of is just a viewer of the repository. Specifically, it's the repository that is on the track server, and it's Sage-Git, although that doesn't really matter much. But it can get a list of all the branches, and there's a lot here. You can get arbitrary diffs between sources, and but it's much better than track for looking at source code and looking at differences between two versions of the source code.
And how easy would it be to exchange the links for these again?
I was thinking of doing that. It should be pretty easy, actually. At least for getting a list of the commits.
Track is so slow.
Yeah, it is so slow.
And
For
it seems looking at each of them, you can stick around in the business.
yeah,
It's incredibly how fast it's slow. How is it possible that traffic is slow? I don't understand.
you can go look at module list, for instance. There's your module list. What? So maybe you want to track is so slow. Yes. So we wanted to do a little bit in the way of examples. So right here, so I guess just starting off with very, very basic example. Working on the development scripts. So let me get up that ticket. So it's 1442. Volker, does that sound right? I think that's it. Yeah. So this is the ticket keeping track of these development scripts that have been being worked on. So I found a couple little things that could be fixed, and so I have two options. Right now I can't not logged into that computer, but I am here, so I'll make changes here. But I have two options. So right now Volker's branch is kind of attached to this ticket. So I'm going to have to change that branch to be something that I have the ability to push to, because right now only Volker has the ability to push to that branch. And I'm pretty sure my branch, actually I have no clue, but I don't know if my branch is up to date with his. So what we'll do, so right here, if we look at the log, I can make it bigger if you want. Yeah. If it loads, it's gonna load. So the most recent commit on here is Volker. fixing a little bug. And is that readable for people now? Okay, cool. And I've made a few more changes here. Right now, if you do some operations that interface with the track server, you'll have to log in, authenticate yourself. But if you authenticate yourself incorrectly, it gives you this error saying, I cannot connect to the track server, even if it can connect to the track server. So made some changes. You can look at the changes, and it just adds, makes it so if you authenticate incorrectly, tells you you have an invalid username or password. So that's all these changes are doing. And so I'm going to commit those. So first thing, I haven't actually staged any of these changes. So since all the changes here are just exactly the changes that I want, I can use git commit-a. This is like Mercurial's commit. Commits all the changes that have been made to files that are tracked by the repository. Or alternatively, I could do git add all those files. And now if you look at the status, they're nice and yellow because I have colored my git, indicating that these are changes that will be included in my next commit. So I've staged these. So this is kind of the staging area that Dan was talking about. I've staged now making or including these files in my change. Is it green? It's green. It's green. Okay. It is kind of a olive color on my display. But so let's commit. So I've staged the changes. I want to commit those. Nano, I guess, is the default editor on here. So what did I do? I made it or fixed bug for login or track of that. Fixed incorrect error for
Wait, what's an incorrect error?
misleading
Error
misleading error.
Yeah, if you could let's say
Next is fixed misleading, misspelling of misleading.
I'm such a bad programmer, but even his errors are wrong.
We'll go with that. So never use Mercurial, but that's for Nano. So fix misleading error message for track authentication error. So now I want to push these up to the track server.
on what branch are you right now?
So right now, my local branch, so on here, I've set up my terminal so that when I'm in a Mercurial or Git repository, it tells me the branch right here. So my branch, we do git branch. My branch is called DevScripts. And that's just my local name for it. So I want to push these changes up to track. So I think on this system, or on this repository's origin. So when you push, the first thing you do is you specify the remote place. So you could have multiple different remote repositories that you're talking with. Maybe you have track as one of your repositories, but you also have a fork on GitHub that you're working with. So on my local system, which this is not on my local system, the track server I call track, GitHub I call GitHub. Here I think it's just called origin, which is the default name. Huh? Remote dash V? Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And actually,
Even when you close on GitHub,
clone from GitHub, then your origin will be GitHub. Just origin being the default support is not
Also we push, we should push on the track. So
Yes.
actually we should pull and push on the track, not on the
You're free to pull and push wherever you're free to pull from wherever you want and push wherever you have permission to push to. If you want to interact with track, then you have to do it.
So if you want to get your code into Sage, then you'll need to push it to track. Yeah, yeah. So
So the way I wrote the manual is would pull by just if you clone from GitHub, then our Git server is not getting slower as it is already. Of course, you can get everything from our records. So the documentation will tell you how to set up track as an external node, and then you will have track as a second node.
so I'm gonna.
What if we have like Sage combination branches and we have them on some other things?
So you could have a server to node.
So you
can
just for
set up
each
your own
branch you
server.
set
Yeah.
your origin or how does that
Origin is just the convention name for the first remote. You can change it to anything else.
Mhm.
Origin is not it's just a convention that this is called origin. It's just a
Yeah.
I
label.
know, but each branch might have a different.
Yes, each branch on each
Oh,
remote
different
can
server
have a
that is-
different name.
Yeah.
Does
So
everybody will have to track? Does
it's-
not have permissions there?
They will. Yeah. I'll talk about that.
So one lesson is you try to use the same name as far as possible, because if you have multiple remote repositories,
So I'm going to try push my changes up. And, well, okay, that was not quite the error I was expecting. I was expecting an error. Although that's not a very useful error. But the error occurs because if you look at the remotes that I listed up earlier have this git :// and that is only a read URL. So you can read repositories through HTTP, and then Git has a kind of proprietary, or not proprietary, but their own special one, which is actually faster than HTTP. But it doesn't allow for pushing. So I'm going to need to change my URL. So remote, I could type remote. I want to set the URL for origin. And I want it to be, I'm going to use, so the authenticated push mechanisms with Git, the native way is to use SSH. So here kind of just looks like an SSH logon. But rather than use your normal user, you use git at, and then here it's git at track.sagemath.org. Well, and then I need to specify the repository, and so we could have multiple repositories on our track server. Right now we don't. We just have our Sage repository up there, but we could potentially host other things like SageMB or something like that.
Do you need to set the port?
So you don't need to do that anymore.
Okay.
Not needed anymore. So, so if I do git at track.sagemath.org/sage.git, this should work, and it will work for me. However, before that'll work, you need to make sure that you've uploaded a public SSH key so that it can authenticate you. So there's two ways to do that. The first way, which is a little hard to do because I'm not logged in here on track, and I don't. Well, the tab is stuck. So if you go into your preferences on track, there's a new tab that we added a few months back called SSH keys, and should add a public key from your local system, whichever one you want, can add multiple systems if you have a laptop, desktop, remote server that you might be pushing to from all these different things. Just add a new one on each line, and then that'll authenticate that public-private key to push. So on here, on